So cool, guys. Thank you so much for the time. Anyway, for taking the time to chat to us, because we saw that the film was getting this amazing kind of Arrow films release, and they're all fantastic with these super duper deluxe kind of cult horror films and everything else. So it's when it came up, we were just like, yes, we've got to do this. We've got to talk about this.
Yeah.
And it's almost
thank you.
That's all right. I mean, it must be great to be in a film that is still being talked about almost 10 years later, because there's even sort of Best Picture winners and Oscar winners and big movies that we still don't talk about 10 years later, and yet here we are talking about your movie. Lucky, if I start with you, I mean, how have you taken kind of the fact that the movie is still kind of going, is still getting so many raves from people, and it's got such a following now?
It's wonderful, you know. I mean, obviously, you hope you make these things to have a long life. You know, the thing that's been interesting about revisiting it, obviously, because we did all the new extra materials, and we remastered the film, everything in the shop that I work at here in El Paso. So it was pretty interesting putting this whole package together, and kind of, you know, we put together this like 75-minute documentary that's like a time capsule of our, you know, of our making the film. So it was like putting me like right back in that place. And then, you know, looking at the film in the context of the time we're living in now, I almost feel like the film is even more relevant now, and might even connect with people more now, just because of the current state of the world and a lot of the things that have kind of transpired since. So yeah, but I mean, you know, this one and my movie May, you know, those films have managed to stick around and find new people here and there. So yeah, it's wonderful when that happens. Doesn't happen with everything. So
yeah, I say it's strange, because, you know, people, I'm sure if you said to most people, asked about the Best Picture winner from 2011, but most people would go, I don't know what that is, you know. Oh,
right.
You know, it might be there was a Batman movie out or something, but that's
right.
about it. But then you get to talk about this film, you know, 10 years later. Pollyanna, for you, I mean, how's your reaction to everything, the fact that the film is still living and breathing, and there's so many new people kind of engaging with it?
It's really thrilling, of course. And, you know, Lucky and I have become dear friends since working together. So I also have that very personal thrill and excitement for his incredible work to be able to be seen again, you know. And I made the sequel to The Woman, Darlin', and at the time of its release, The Woman wasn't available. So it's extra exciting for me as well that people get to either go back or watch it and then watch Darlin' after, you know, as a filmmaker myself, and much inspired by Lucky in that regard. So there are it's so much joy for me to know that people are going to get to see it, because I've seen a lot of people when Darlin' was released going, we can't get hold of The Woman, we can't get hold of The Woman. And I'm like, I know, it's coming, but I can't say when, but it's coming back. So this is really a lovely thing to see. And then to see the cover art by Vanessa, Lucky's wife, who is also a dear friend, is just, it just feels really right, doesn't it, Lucko? It feels really right to have
yeah.
I've got it right here, actually. I got one in the mail, and I've been wanting to tell you, Lucky, how thrilled I am.
They're pretty, aren't they?
Gorgeous. Congratulations.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's coming out on VHS, I mean, that it's come out on VHS, it's like, it's coming out on VHS, I should say. It's been printed on VHS already. But it's also super cool and retro, and I think it's just the right, Arrow are just the right people to be doing this, because of their passion and understanding of films like this, and because of how respected they are, and so new people can discover it as well. So yeah, this Vanessa work is amazing. And I love how she's kind of given her that those eyebrows and sort of almost a makeup-y look from the scene, if I'm getting this right, from the scene in which Brian is thinking about the woman and looking at her like that, as well as giving her all the terror and viciousness that she's got too. So it's just great to have such an amazing artist do that and bring so much to the cover. I don't know. What I'm trying to say is I'm really happy.
Yeah, it was really nice to put it on the shelf for sure. I mean, I've always, you know, I've got a lot of Arrow movies on my shelf, and you know, I have had a lot of experiences getting things ready to go out on, you know, physical format, but I've never had an experience like this. I mean, they're just like so thorough. They have good taste, you know. They get the film. I mean, if you watch the new trailer they made for the film, it's like it's a lot of times you'll cut together a trailer for a studio will cut together a trailer for a film, and it'll just focus on the horror. It'll just focus on, just like one layer of the film, but like their trailer managed to capture the sense of humor, the subtext, and a lot of the things you can just tell that they get it. And that's very, very rare, and this was coming on the heels of the last movie I made. I finished it and they just dumped it on iTunes with no press, nothing, just nothing, just no care. So it was very, very kind of reinstilled my faith in this thing that we do, and it's a celebration of one of the best creative experiences I've ever had in my life. I mean, like, I made friends for life on this film, and felt like I was able to exercise from myself a lot of anger that I was feeling at the time, and revisiting the film now in the context of me, when I made the film, I wasn't married, I didn't have a child, so being the father of a son now and absorbing the weight of that responsibility, looking at the film kind of through that lens now, has been kind of beautiful, kind of beautiful to watch. So.
Well, I was going to ask you both about revisiting it, because obviously, in my job and obviously in your job as well, we do these interviews and these junkets when the film's coming out, or it's getting released on DVD, all that kind of stuff. But rarely do you get to kind of talk about a film, let alone a film like yours, which has been unavailable for a long time. Has it been kind of good and cathartic and enjoyable to go back and revisit and see just exactly why the film has become what it's become?
Yeah, you get distance from these things, and then it almost, after, like, say 7-8 years, especially almost a decade at this point for this, since I was really, really heavy into making it, it changes, and it almost feels like the film was made by a different person, so yeah, it's really interesting the way these things kind of transform over time. I mean, I watched it a few years ago with my sound designer when we were getting ready to do the sound design on something else, and we both hadn't watched the film for several years, and we turned it on, and we were shocked by how much we, everything that we had done in the mix, that was the first thing we had worked on together, and and just like the bold kind of choices that we made editorially and obviously musically. Not everybody digs on the approach to the music in the film, but like, it was so special, especially to us making the film, because all that music was being created as we were shooting the film. So it's been, it's always interesting to look back, and it's especially cool to look back on something and not drudge up all these, because you have a lot of bad experiences in the business too, but this one, I feel a lot of warmth when I revisit it, and it's also like a reminder of like, yeah, man, when you really dig your heels in and you carve out that creative control for yourself, you can, but you don't take it for granted. You can really do something special that hopefully, people still talk about years later. So.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Pollyanna, for you, I mean, you've had your own. You're like Chris Evans and Captain America. You've had your own like little trilogy infused with the character and everything. You had your own.
I am exactly like Chris Evans.
You've had your own sort of trilogy, like Batman or something.
I've always said that same thing.
Very similar.
Absolutely.
Very similar.
We get mistaken all the time. It's so awkward for him,
So awkward.
Yeah.
When I watched Knives Out, I was a bit confused.
I know
whether it was him or you. But
happens to the best of us.
But you obviously, you've been with this character for such a while, and she's been such a big part of your life. I mean, that must be such an amazing feeling to have a character that's very different to everything that's out there, but it's been embraced by so many people, and people have taken to her in such a way that you're still talking about her, and you're still, obviously you went and made another movie, so that must be so rewarding and so thrilling that people are taken to her like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from when I first picked up Offspring, by Jack Ketchum, that the producer of all three films and the director of the first sent me, I just got so involved with this world and with this life that she has, and she's grown and stretched and gone through so much since that initial discovery for me through the book of her. And she's such a pleasure to sort of step back into the dirty feet of, and every time I play her. I think that what's most wonderful to me about it is having heard, personally from fans, because I do a lot of conventions since The Walking Dead. So I get to meet a lot of the women fans through that. And I always get really thrilled when they bring up a copy of the movie, and I'm like, oh, cool, you're a woman fan. We get to chat about that. And also on social media, just seeing so many women as well. Excuse me, so many women saying, this really, really helped me work through some abuse issues, this film, and I really connect with her in this way or that way. And I'm a big nature worshiper, and anything that reminds us of our animal state, just the way in which we talk societally about animals and don't include ourselves in that is still so bizarre to me. So there's just a lot that I love about her, and a lot that I relate to. Can I say that?
Yeah,
not
totally.
The killer, and not the killer that she is, but of course. And I find that for a lot of other people, and it's a funny one for me to talk about. Every question seems so big because there's so much of my experience in the woman. There's so much of my experience of Ketchum's creation of her, and then of Lucky's creation of her, along with Ketchum, and then what happened with me and Darlin and how I carried it on. And so, I'll gab on and on if you let me, but essentially it is an absolute thrill. And I think there's really good reason why people love this movie and feel passionate about it. And as Lucky was saying, this is a great opportunity for those who haven't seen it to revisit it, to go, oh yeah, maybe before they thought that the music was, sometimes people would say, oh, the music doesn't work with the film because it's off as is intended. It was a different way of doing it. And I think that in time since the film has come out, I think a lot of people will be going, oh shit, I see what he was trying to do. I see how this works. And I hope that it'll be fun to meet all the more fans of it afterwards and hear that sort of stuff.
It's also interesting now that there's three of them. I think one of the unique qualities of if you look at them all as of a piece, that you can jump into any of the three movies first. You don't have to start at Offspring and go all the way through. I mean, you can start at Darlin, and that can draw you back to Offspring, or if if you're curious about Darlin's character specifically, you can go back to The Woman. And the sharp turns in terms of tone between each film are, I think that's a unique quality to it as a trilogy. It's still kind of hard for me to wrap my head around the fact that there's three of these things, because The Woman for me, as I'm sure Darlin is for Polly, was such an intense personal experience, that even while making it, it's like I almost forget that something came before it, and I know with Darlin, I mean, Polly dove like really, really deep into a personal space as well. That it's, they each one is a standalone. They all are connected to each other, but it's a very, I don't know, it's very versatile. You can approach it in from many different angles, and it still works.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think it's because The Woman is so very different from Offspring that Darlin is allowed to be so very different as well, because they are three different, creators' creations, and yet they bring in so many other, like in Offspring's case, it brings in, of course, Ketchum so strongly, and with you the same thing, and then you don't want, when you're making a sequel to something like The Woman, which is such an incredible film, and I never expected I could emulate what Lucky did, and never wanted to. Wanted to do something new, and yet of course there's massive inspiration from that. And just as you say, Lucky, I totally agree with you, but also as an actor in The Woman was so personal for me. You were the first writer who had ever come to me and said, in this case co-writer director, ever come to me 4 months before production and said, give me notes on the whole script, tell me what you think about anything you want to talk about, just let's talk. And Lucky and I had only met in a sushi restaurant in LA up to that point. And I'm living in London, and he's in the States, and we're emailing back and forth, and I'm getting to see storyboards. And I just felt so much a part of that film, and I felt so much freedom in the work within it. And like you say, I made such lifelong friends as well from that film, that it does feel very, very personal and very unique to me, and it inspired me to, in many ways, to be a filmmaker later on, you know, because I was trusted like that, and I was encouraged like that, and I will never stop thanking you for it, humble as you are, and hard as it is for you
the
to
feeling's
take.
mutual.
That must be great though, because cinema in 2020, obviously it's very different at the moment, obviously, but it's so based on money and franchises and all this other stuff. So to make movies like this, even though they are in the context of a horror film, not only can you tell the stories you want to tell and the narratives and make the choices that you want, but it must be so freeing as artists to be able to make what you want to make with restrictions of budget and everything else. But as you say, to make a film that is very personal and does have something to say that you may not get the ability to do so if you were to say, if someone said, oh, here's $100 million to make this movie. So that must be, for you as artists, that must be so freeing and so rewarding to be able to still make movies like that, where you are able to make the movie that you want to make.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as Lucky's said, as you know, I concur as well on and you still have to dig your heels in, and you still have to hold. And you know, I had a lot of fight in the edit for Darlin, you know, and again, Lucky was there encouraging me, and through his experiences and going, you're making an artist's vision, stick to what you're doing, keep going, you know. Of course you must listen and collaborate. That's part of the joy of it. But yeah, amen to true indie filmmaking and getting to bring everybody's work together and create a film that stands up to what the script was, that the people who joined your crew and worked so incredibly hard, and in many cases on very low budgets and on very tight time. I feel with both films that the people involved in them were doing it because of the passion and understanding of what the work was in the first place. And I feel as a filmmaker, I can only speak for myself, but I think Lucky would agree that it's our responsibility also on that level to ensure that it is what it's supposed to be and doesn't become bastardized by the commercialism and the fear of the commercialism not paying off.
You're always looking at people's motivations for why they're giving you notes, you know, and those motivations aren't always in the best interest of the movie. They're a lot of times they're based in fear, and a lot of times you get needled to death even on small films. You get needled to death on things that are ultimately inconsequential to whether or not the film, you know, is successful. Most of the time, all it ends up doing is pissing off the artist and making the artist not want to work with the people that are browbeating them on a daily basis. And it's especially insulting when it is a low budget film and there isn't that $100 million on the line. I mean, that's you know, that's a different conversation, you know. But you know, fortunately, I think we were both able to complete our films in as pure a form as possible, given the resources that we had. You know,
yeah.
I think. I mean, wouldn't you say, Polly?
Yes, I would agree. Yeah.
Yeah. I was reading up about your experience of taking it to Sundance, which I can imagine was a strange experience. And I read some on a article today that someone had put from a long time ago and said that after the screening, someone had said to you know, they come out and they give their scores, don't they, or whatever they do, and someone said, this isn't art, this is just bullshit. But I wondered how you guys react to
Angry Man, we call him.
But I wonder how you react to reactions, good or bad, because it must be important to you guys, and when people who saw the film for the first time, that there was a reaction, whether positive or negative, that they were talking about the film and there was a buzz going, whether good or bad, and how that kind of affected the movie back then. Did it kind of stop the flow of the movie, or did it just kind of irons in the fire?
You know, if after that guy had his little meltdown, which, hey, you know, that was his personal experience with the movie, what are you going to do? If the movie had been released like 2 weeks after that guy had his meltdown, I think it would have been a much more successful film. It got us a lot of attention, you know. It really, really got under the guy's skin. I think he fell victim to this thing that happens with people where they think if you're showing something that you're condoning it. And that's definitely not the case. I mean, everybody working on the film very, very conscious of how delicate the subject matter we were dealing with, but we also didn't want to deal with it with kid gloves, because what's the point of that? You know, we wanted to kind of tackle it head on, and there were things in the original script and in the book that you know were no zones for me. I couldn't go that far because I have to be able to look myself in the mirror at the end of the day, you know. But everything was done with great care, and we had all these conversations. And when you're making a film with a group of artists, hopefully you pick enough good-hearted people that you have this safety bubble around you of everybody that will anybody that will call you out on your bullshit. Like, whoa, man, you know what? That's a little too far right there. Or did you consider that could be looked at this way? You know, we had all those discussions. What Polly was talking about earlier, when I gave her the script, it's like, I don't just want you to give me, you know, tweaks on making your dialogue come out. Well, she didn't really have dialogue in this movie, but I'm not asking you to, you know, to give me notes just on your department, which is your character. I want to know how this thing makes you feel, because the people you're working with in a respect are a brain trust, but they're also your test audience. You know, they're the first people that are experiencing these, you know, these words being dramatized. So you have to really, really lean on each other and not be so egotistical that you think that it all just has to be the way it is in your head, because I think that's boring. And it's a different thing, you know. So we all, you know, that guy having his meltdown, for me, it was, I'd really like to hear what Polly's experience was like with that emotionally, because we had worked on this film in a bubble, like I said, and didn't test it out on a lot of people or anything. So it's like when we showed up at Sundance, we were showing, you know, we'd been very isolated. The post-production process was just me and 3 other guys in a house in the middle of nowhere in Oklahoma, like finishing this thing. So when we presented at Sundance, there was a tremendous amount of anxiety coursing. I could barely stand up. I was so nervous, you know, because I knew the movie was harsh, and I knew it would get a very emotional reaction out of people, and it might push people's buttons. You know, the biggest concern is that it would hurt somebody that had been abused in a negative way as opposed to a cathartic way. So coupling that guy's reaction on top of the anxiety I was already feeling was a lot to take for me. I'm surprised I made it through the night, actually.
He was pale green.
Yeah.
Like he was pale green.
Yeah.
And I felt so much for you. I knew you had a great film. It was the first time I was seeing it. I knew everything that had gone into that film, you know, obviously. And here we were with our big audience at Sundance. Do you remember we just done our little press pictures before and done the carpet, and there was like so much cast and crew that had made their own journey to Sundance just to be there. Scott, to be with us all together, because there was so much love amongst the cast and crew for this film and what we'd done together and the experience. And to see that man stand up before Lucky had even had a chance to do a Q&A, before the audience as a group had a chance to put hands up and ask questions and share their experience with him of it, for that man to be standing up and having a one-man ski-jacketed protest at Sundance of all places, at a midnight screening of all places, clearly had come in not knowing what the deal was. I just felt immediately very protective of him, of you, Lucky, you know, because I felt that what he was saying was not true at all. And when he said, you know, about the women in this film as if we were sort of forced into something awful, that's when I stood the fuck up, and so did everybody next to me. We were like, all the women who were in the film next to me were like, excuse me. And plus, after watching a very emotional and strong film like that, you know, you need a moment to digest it, and you want to be together. You don't want another violent outburst, you know. It felt violent to me. And so and there was defense from a journalist in the audience, I remember. But like Lucky was saying, the fact is, when someone was smart enough to record what was going on and ended up on YouTube, we had the pleasure, once we had done a great Q&A, and once we had heard from more people, and once we had got a chance to celebrate that the film had actually gone down very well, we were then watching these numbers going on the YouTube, you know, of everybody watching it. And for our little film at Sundance, we got a lot more attention because of it, because everyone wants to talk about the drama, you know. So it was it brought more people to the film.
There was several people that were I would say accusing or insinuating that we had planted that guy.
Yeah, there was that nonsense too.
That it was a piece of, you know, manufactured drama that we created to get attention, and it just was not the case.
We were definitely at the end of the budget. We couldn't have afforded an actor that good.
Exactly. But you know, I experienced this all the way going back to film school when I would make films with touchy subject matter, where especially stories dealing focused on women, who women I mean are you know, a lot of the women characters in my movies are just are avatars or masks for just me personally. You know, there's no, you know, there's what I found is the people that more often than not got offended were men. Women understood, I guess, what I was trying to communicate, or what I was, you know, what I was after, even if I wasn't, you know, pulling it off perfectly, even in those early days. But it's this thing that I've kind of come to understand is called white knight syndrome. You know, where these men feel like they need to stand up for women as if women can't. I don't know if somewhere in their, you know, deep in their caveman DNA, they think that it's their job to, you know, protect women when women are perfectly capable of speaking up for themselves. You know, do you know what I'm talking about, Polly?
I do, I mean, and I totally,
and I'm personally have been guilty of that. You know what I mean? Over the course of my life as a man, I think it's something that's wired in there, and it comes out of people in different ways. You know?
Yeah, I think, and I'd add to that also that men in our society are still raised to believe that they should be in control of things, that they can be and should be in control of things. And my sense of him, I think, is probably similar to what you sensed about him. My sense about him was that he was wanting to do something about what he was seeing, and the only way he could interpret it and make sense of it for him to feel back in control again was to protest it, say it should be burnt, say it wasn't art, say all these things, because I don't think he could take what he was seeing and instead of turning it, you know, and hopefully, I mean, I don't know the man, but hopefully if he had more time and to process it at some point, he might have understood that it was anathema to what he was trying to do. What he actually did was anathema to what he was trying to do. Or to the feelings that he was feeling were because of a truth that he was unable to deal with, which is, this is real, this happens, you're a part of it, we're all a part of it, and it's actually a voice that's standing up for it instead of encouraging it. And I just don't think he could compute it, you know?
Yeah.
I think that so long as we raise young men to believe that they need to be emotionless and in control, emotionless other than angry, we are going to continue to see these issues reoccur. And I think that was some of what was going on for him, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. Well, guys, thank you so much for taking the time. I'm so happy for you that the movie's getting re-released, and all these new people are going to get to see it at a time when it could be more prevalent than ever in some respects. Do you know what I mean? So thank you so much for your time. Absolute pleasure talking to you both. I really love the film, and I hope the Blu-ray release goes down a storm. I can't wait to get my copy if they send me one.
Awesome. Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
We'll give Tom a hard time about it.
Yeah. He sent me one when he's back in his office. Guys, thank you so much. Absolute pleasure talking to you both, and I hope you stay
Thank
safe
you,
and everything.
Scott.
Nice to meet you.
You too.
Take care.
Good to
See you
see
later,
you, Lucko. Bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys.
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey, you guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yeah.
Nice.
Hey, you